Ben Shapiro came out and went against Dave Smith like he always does and was attacking him for his non-interventionist policies and not wanting to get in this war with Iran. And I don't know this because I spend a lot of time listening to Ben Shapiro, but I know it because Dave Smith did an episode called Ben Shapiro is Pathetic, as one of his episodes on Part of the Problem podcast that he does with Robbie the Fire Bernstein. And they shredded Ben Shapiro, and it was hilarious. And they played like most of the clip of Ben Shapiro going after Dave Smith. And one of the things that Ben Shapiro talked about was the debate Dave Smith did with Coleman Hughes. And Ben Shapiro said, if you want to see Dave Smith get obliterated in a debate, go watch him with Coleman Hughes. So I was interested. I wanted to see, I always want to see a compelling argument against someone that I tend to agree with, because I tend to agree with Dave Smith on almost not everything, but a lot of things I agree with Dave Smith on, especially his foreign policy stance. So I'm always interested to try to find a compelling argument against what I think, because I'm open. If I can be proven wrong, or I can see something that is strong enough to change my opinion, I'm open to that. And I'm always interested in anybody that has an opposing view. So I went and watched Dave Smith and the Coleman Hughes debate, and it's 3.5 hours long. It took me. I had to watch it in sections because I try to keep up with other things going on. I mean, especially right now with what's going on with Iran, there's a lot. So I finally finished it the other day, but it's 3.5 hours long, and it's a really good discussion. Okay, Dave Smith and Coleman Hughes, I thought both did a really good job, making the case for why they, think the way they think. But at the end of the day, I don't think either one of them you could say won. Like, I think if you came in and you were like me and you already had a non-interventionist view of foreign policy and you agreed with Dave Smith, then Coleman Hughes didn't change your mind. But if you came in and you were kind of on the side of, oh, I think we should intervene, and there's times to justify it, and you're basically an interventionist, then I think you would agree with Coleman Hughes, and I don't think Dave Smith would have changed your mind. So I think it's just there's philosophical differences. You know what I mean? Like, there's people that think the United States military needs to be the world police and has a responsibility to be involved all over the world, and I disagree with that. You know what I mean? So it's like there's a philosophical difference, and people are just going to think what they think. And I mean, I can try to make my case as to why I don't think we need to do that. One of the main things I point to is the fact that we're $40 trillion in debt, and supporting this American empire is unsustainable, and it's actually making us less secure. But there's people that think that it's worth that, and they think we need to be everywhere all the time. And it's just people have different interpretations of the same events. Like, Dave Smith could look at the clean break strategy memo that came out in 96 and say, like, hey, look, isn't it weird that a lot of the things that were laid out in this this policy paper were implemented? And then Coleman Hughes' take on it was, well, this had to do with the Israeli government. So the fact that you saw some of those policies reflected in the United States foreign policy had nothing to do with it. And it's like, yeah, but it's a little bit weird. So it's just, you can look at the same thing, and people have like, think about, like, you and your friend are out and something happens, and you all could tell the same, like, you all could have seen the exact same thing happen, but y'all are both going to tell maybe a slightly different variation of the story. And that's just the way things are. But again, I think it was a really good conversation between Dave Smith and Coleman Hughes, and I think everybody should check it out, especially if you're somebody that doesn't have a lot of knowledge of, kind of the Israeli-Palestinian history, and you don't know a lot about Middle Eastern foreign policy. You should listen to it, because it's a good discussion. They don't start attacking each other's character. They don't talk over each other. It's just a good debate. So I think everybody should check it out. But at the end of the day, I don't think Dave Smith got killed by Coleman Hughes or anything like that. And again, I don't think there was really a winner or loser of the debate, but I will say that the last 15 minutes of the episode really aged well for Dave Smith because they kind of get into Iran and the 12-day war and everything that went on. And this discussion between Dave Smith and Coleman Hughes took place about 5 months ago. But so they're talking about the 12-day war, and Coleman Hughes is kind of using that as an example of a successful intervention and, thought it went well. And Dave Smith's like, well, this might just be halftime. Dave Smith's like, we don't really know that this is over, and it's a little too early to determine that that was a successful intervention. And if you look at where we're at now and everything that's going on with Iran, that take really aged well for Dave Smith. And I would be willing to bet that a lot of people that listen to Ben Shapiro, they probably aren't going to even take the time to go listen to the Coleman Hughes Dave Smith debate. They're just going to repeat that. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, Coleman Hughes just killed Dave Smith, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny because that dude, Adam Sosnick from the Patrick Bet-David show, he made that same point the other day when Dave Smith was debating him on the Pierce Morgan show. Adam Sosnick brought up like, oh, yeah, Coleman Hughes really took you apart. And then Dave Smith just laid into Adam Sosnick, which is hilarious. But, yeah, so go check it out. You know what I mean? The more conversations that we have, like good faith conversations that we have, the more we can maybe try to, like, fix some things. I don't know. I'm just trying to be optimistic, but it was a good talk between Coleman and Dave Smith, and I got a debate saved on my watch later list between Glenn Greenwald and Coleman Hughes, so I'm interested to check that one out. So thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and have a good day.